Welcome to another episode of Behind the Charge. My name is Miriam Laubenbacher and I'm the head of communications of EcoG. Today I'm joined by a guest who just came in as EcoG in our new advisory board and is one of the key experts. She brings deep experience in scaling high growth, consumer technology focused, as well as clean energy businesses. As Chief Revenue Officer of EVgo, she led a period of rapid expansion, growing revenue from 50 million to over 250 million while helping accelerate the EV adoption in the US. Prior to that, she held senior leadership roles at Google, including head of growth for Google Nest, where she drove strategy for the smart home business and helped launch and scale flagship products like Chromecast and Google Home Mini. Welcome to our podcast, Tanvi Chaturvedi.
Thank you so much, Marian. Very happy to be here.
You're joining us today from the US, and even though we have an HQ in the US, I'm super curious. How did you learn about EcoG, and what were your first thoughts?
Yeah, look, I've been immersed in the clean energy and EV charging ecosystem for many years now. And EcoG came to my radar as, one of the companies that is solving the foundational infrastructure challenge. I refer to it as the Android of EV charging because it's delivering this critical operating system layer that enhances charger reliability. So I was very impressed to see that EcoG is already present across several key markets, a very strong presence in Europe, growing presence in India as well as the United States.
Thanks so much for sharing that. That already leads to my second question: is why did you join us as an advisory board member? What made it interesting for you?
Yeah, I'm very passionate about building the clean energy ecosystem. Obviously, I was the chief revenue officer at EVgo, which is one of the largest charge point operators in United States, and I met with Jorg a few months back, and I was very impressed by his vision for the company. Super humble, super honest. I've met the management team, so I'm very impressed by the management team. I also visited the offices at Munich, so I had an opportunity to dive deeply into the product offering. And if you take a step back in this industry, it's a very fragmented space. There's many hardware manufacturers, there's a fragmented software layer, many types of EV car models, and also charging standards. There's NACS, there's CCS. So I think there's a need for a standardized architecture that really enables the infrastructure to develop in a very reliable manner. And I think this is a phenomenal opportunity. EcoG is positioned to be a category defining company. So I'm very excited to work with the management team and really help drive the next phase of growth.
Thanks so much for that insight. And yeah, that definitely paves the way for us with your vision that you just shared as well, with the vision that our management has. And you have always been part of companies that have big visions. So when we talk a bit about your time at EVgo, what do you think was mission critical back then to get EVgo from tens of millions to hundreds of millions of revenue?
Yeah, so I mean, we were going through a very phase of scaling the company, and I would say there were several key pillars. The first one was to make sure that our north star is network utilization. We can continue building the chargers, but we wanted to make sure that every single EV driver in the country, in the United States, comes and charges on our network. So how do we make sure we set up this consumer funnel where we are acquiring every single customer who's purchasing an EV to become a paid user at the EVgo network? How do we make sure that they are returning customers through subscription plans? There was a lot of focus around pricing initiatives, making this from a stable pricing to dynamic pricing, and pricing in Manhattan should be different from pricing in New Jersey, for example. So a lot of data science efforts as well to make sure that our network is utilized and that stays the North Star, because it's a very capital intensive business, and we want to make sure that every dollar that we're spending has a strong ROI. So that was one. The other one I would say is having marquee partnerships. Partnerships with auto manufacturers, with fleets, with retailers who are also site hosts, and also utilities. So how do we make sure that the entire ecosystem is set up to drive that growth? And lastly, I would say is a laser sharp focus on reliability and customer experience. That continues to be a challenge in the industry, and we want it to be the best network that provides reliable, convenient charging experience to the end customer. So that was a huge focus of the company as well.
You talked also about the ecosystems, and you have also, previous to your role at EVgo, spent time at Google, where you had several positions in, and one of them was also a lot about the digital ecosystem and how you grow it. So, in your perspective, what is the most critical ingredient for a platform like ours, now an operating system, to become an industry standard?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I sort of called it the Android of EV charging. And for an ecosystem to be a horizontal layer that enables third-party hardware to thrive is very critical. So what makes a good platform? I think in general there's a few patterns that consistently show up. The first one is interoperability and reliability at scale. As we mentioned, it's a fragmented space. So making sure across different countries, different jurisdictions, different hardware manufacturers, and different EV models, the solution is actually working. And an EV car model in any country is able to talk to the hardware in that country. So that is critical for a good platform to succeed. The second one is developer ecosystem. So
Mhm.
having open APIs that you can build upon.
Yeah.
So it should be incredibly easy for any manufacturer to build on top of this platform. They should also feel that this is the most reliable platform to run their product on. So once you have those two things figured out, then the rest of the ecosystem builds around it. Um, and then lastly, we talk about reliability. Doing it at scale is very critical. And I think EcoG has shown that with 25,000 units in the field across different countries, that it can maintain that uptime and maintain that reliability at scale across different geographies. So I think those are the things that sort of make a good platform.
Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, so easy and reliable, right, were the two words that we should build up on. This was actually the perfect prelude to my next question, because we actually come into that moment where it's becoming incredibly valuable for our partners, right? So they build up on our platform. And now, talking about our direct customers, the manufacturers of charging stations, what do you think? How can they use our platform best to make their charging experience easy and reliable for their partners?
I think that's where the long-term value of the business is. Um, EcoG sits in a unique position. It has access to real-world operational data across the charging lifecycle. So imagine having access to every single charging session in the site across different geographies. And there's multiple players in this ecosystem, right? And
Yeah.
individually, they do not have access to this data. So as an auto manufacturer or a charge point operator, they would not have access to standard data across all charging sessions. So I think that puts EcoG in a very awesome position, and this also enables a shift towards physical AI driven optimization. So you can think about things like predictive maintenance, um, or smart energy management, fleet management, and also better user experience design. So I think ultimately EcoG becomes a platform business. The more data you have, the more insights you draw from it, and the more value you create with all of the partners in that ecosystem.
Absolutely. And talking about exactly that point that you just made, the more people the platform use, the more value it creates.
Yeah.
So, how can we leverage that network effect even more? What can we do already now?
Yeah. So the parallel example that comes to mind is from my Google days, when I worked on Google hardware products with a software layer built in. At the time, it was Assistant. Nowadays, it's Gemini, and I launched a smart home speaker called Google Home Mini, and there was so much learning around where does the speaker sit in your home, different types of homes, different types of noise environments, different languages that people are speaking, different accents of the same language. So I think a great platform really benefits from learning about all of these edge cases and improving the product based on those edge cases. And the benefit that the ecosystem has is once you enable a certain edge case through a software update, that update propagates across the entire ecosystem and everybody on the platform benefits from it.
Yeah.
So I think it's a very difficult thing to do, but the longer that you invest in it, it becomes a very strong competitive moat that is hard to replicate. So, I would say to your question on how to do it is, developing that developer ecosystem is very critical. Having third parties to build on top of EcoG's APIs is very critical. And then also making that data that you collect from the field easily accessible and useful for the various parties. So a combination of those two would really propagate this network effect.
Yeah. Thank you so much, and definitely food for thought also for now for us. Now, talking a bit about the advisory board, you joined the advisory board together with Tomi Ristimaki, who was former CEO of Kempower, and now you're also coming in, former EVgo, former Google. So you bring also more the North American market experience within, and Tomi comes from Europe, scaling an EV charging company from very small to very big. What do you think, the duo of you two industry experts, what is the unique advantage that you give us as EcoG?
Yeah, so excited to work with Tomi. He has phenomenal background and experience, like you said, in scaling a company from very young to really one of the leading players. I think he also has a great understanding of how a charger manufacturer thinks, having led the company. I think, in my experience, scaling businesses across Google and EVgo, as well as geographic expansion, while I was working at Google, I think are critical. For EcoG to realize its global potential, I think winning in the US market will be a critical value unlock. So I think that's where some of my background and expertise may help. In North America, it's a very different market. Just bringing that Silicon Valley ethos and making sure that we marry it with the excellence of German engineering, I think that can create a very, very solid growth curve for the company. And I'm very excited to partner with Jorg and the management team to really help EcoG realize its full global potential.
Silicon Valley is also growth at all costs very often. And what do you think? Can we adapt to this while keeping a critical infrastructure business, which is also often slow and talks a lot about reliability, right? And needs to be reliable. How can we merge these two worlds together and get the best out of it?
It's a hardware infrastructure business, so making sure that it's reliable and we still move at a pace that allows growth for the company is critical. But there's elements that you can apply from the Silicon Valley mindset. One is customer obsession, so keeping the customer in mind, solving for the product so that the end customer goal is achieved in terms of offering a seamless, reliable, convenient solution and working backwards from it. The second I would say is iterating at the software layer. So, iterate until the product is perfect. That's also a very Silicon Valley mindset and definitely applies to EcoG's business. And lastly, data-driven decision making. You have access to so much data, leveraging that, and again, iterating on the solution to eventually provide that best customer experience are things that you can take from that Silicon Valley mindset. But at the same time, staying focused on your North Star, which is reliability and uptime. So, never losing sight of that, because that is sort of the fundamental requirement for the industry today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing. And also talking a bit about the future. So imagine in 3 years, what do you think the EcoG powered world looks like? And how will infrastructure operate in the next years? It can be also more than 3 years.
So I think, EcoG is enabling transformation that is changing how we live. It's not just about owning an EV car, but it's about how we travel from point A to point B. It could be an electric vehicle, it could be an autonomous driving car. I envision that EcoG becomes the standard operating system for charging infrastructure globally. And this would allow the infrastructure to be seamless, reliable, and the industry requires standardization. It requires reliability at scale, and it also requires a true global platform. And I think EcoG is really well positioned to deliver on that.
Thank you so much for your time and also for giving us your insights on why you're joining us. I think it's a really unique strength that you're bringing in with all the different backgrounds that you have.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate the conversation and look forward to working with the team.
Thanks so much. All the best. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.